Photosynthesis was established on Earth approximately 3.5 billion years ago. The primitive photosynthetic organisms most certainly were anoxygenic, or non-oxygen evolving. This presentation will explain how oxygenic photosynthesis developed and its repercussions on Earth. About 2.4 billion years ago, cyanobacteria began to produce oxygen by photosynthesis, and a subsequent rise of oxygen in the atmosphere occurred. From the primitive anoxygenic photosynthesis, oxygenic photosynthesis developed. But first, the oxygen produced by the cyanobacteria dissolved in the surrounding bodies of water until they were saturated with oxygen. Then, the oxygen produced oxidized iron, which accumulated as sediments. Finally, the oxygen produced by the cyanobacteria entered the atmosphere, causing a buildup of oxygen. This event is known as the Great Oxygenation Event. The Great Oxygenation Event was an extreme rise of oxygen in the atmosphere. This rise is displayed on the graph. The rise was directly caused by the evolution of oxygen-producing photosynthesis. The repercussions of oxygen-evolving photosynthesis are noteworthy. The free oxygen in the atmosphere was toxic to anaerobic organisms. The oxygen attacked chemical bonds, inhibited enzymes, and damaged cells. Thus, cyanobacteria were responsible for one of the most significant extinction events in the history of Earth. Some of these organisms survived in habitats that remained anaerobic. On the other hand, oxygenic photosynthesis gave rise to the emergence of organisms that breathe oxygen. The appearance of eukaryotic cells with the ability to breathe oxygen permitted the evolution of complex eukaryotic life. Finally, the rise of oxygen in the atmosphere permitted the development of advanced life by creating an ozone layer, thus shielding Earth from UV radiation. But how did oxygen-evolving photosynthesis develop in the first place? There are two parts to photosynthesis that both evolved to produce the current photosynthesis that we know of today. These two pathways are the light reactions and the Calvin cycle. The light reactions convert solar energy to chemical energy. In this process, water is split and oxygen is given off as a byproduct. The photosynthetic reaction center is the heart of the solar energy conversion process. There are two types of reaction centers, type 1 and type 2. All oxygenic phototropes have one type 1 and one type 2 reaction center, whereas anoxygenic phototropes only have one or the other. Evidence suggests that all reaction centers evolved from a single common ancestor that was an intermediate between reaction center 1 and reaction center 2. Both reaction centers came to be in a single organism through a fusion of two organisms with one reaction center each. The organisms with the two reaction centers then began to develop the ability to oxidize water. The Calvin cycle is the second part of the photosynthetic pathways. The Calvin cycle is an anabolic cycle that fixes carbon into organic molecules. Carbon enters the cycle through CO2 and leaves in the form of sugar. All oxygenic photosynthetic organisms carry out carbon fixation. Anoxygenic phototropes lack any known autotropic carbon fixation pathway. Therefore, the ability to fix inorganic carbon was added in the course of evolution of photosynthesis. However, in hot and arid climates, alternative methods of carbon fixation have developed. C3 plants fixate carbon via the enzyme rubisco. When temperatures increase, the stomata of plants partly close, and C3 plants produce less sugar because there is less CO2 to be fixated in the Calvin cycle. The lack of CO2 causes plants to use O2 in the Calvin cycle in the process of photorespiration. This is counterproductive for the plant because ATP is consumed rather than produced. From C3 plants evolved C4 plants, which use alternative modes of carbon fixation. The carbon fixation of C4 plants is more productive in warm and sunny conditions because it uses bundle sheath and mesophyll cells. Another photosynthetic adaptation to arid conditions is the evolution of CAM pathways from C3 plants. CAM plants store organic acids they make in the night until the morning when CO2 is fixated. Therefore, C4 plants and CAM plants both evolved from C3 plants.